The sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the sterile conference room, slicing through the tense silence like a blade. Amelia's heart pounded against her ribs as she stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, her 72 years of experience and dedication compressed into this single moment of reckoning. Across from her sat Ethan Caldwell, the 34-year-old CEO whose family had built Caldwell Tech into a billion-dollar empire, his designer suit unable to conceal the smug satisfaction radiating from his every pore. Amelia Thompson, Ethan's voice carried through the room, each word deliberately measured. After 47 years of service, I'm afraid your position with Caldwell Tech is no longer required. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the termination papers before him, the sound grating against Amelia's nerves like nails on glass. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd personally trained 3 generations of Caldwells in corporate governance, including this very man who now dismissed her with the casual indifference of swatting away a fly. The faces around the table blurred into a sea of uncomfortable expressions. Colleagues who had once sought her guidance, mentored under her watchful eye, now avoided meeting her gaze. Some shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, while others busied themselves with their tablets, pretending not to witness this public execution. Only yesterday, she'd been leading the quarterly strategy meeting from this very spot. Today, she was being shown the door like an unwanted relic of the past. Her hands trembled slightly as she gathered her notes, but she forced them steady. 4 decades of navigating boardroom politics had taught her that power wasn't always about volume or aggression. Sometimes it was about knowing when to hold your cards close. The termination papers lay before her, stark white against the dark wood, each line of legal jargon a calculated attempt to erase her legacy. But what Ethan didn't know, what none of these people knew, was that Amelia had spent the last 6 months meticulously documenting something far more valuable than any severance package. As she signed the final document with deliberate precision, her pen moving across the paper like a surgeon's scalpel, Amelia allowed herself a small inward smile. The young CEO might have thought he was ending her career, but in reality, he was stepping directly into the trap she'd so carefully prepared. Every meeting, every email, every questionable transaction, she had recorded it all, building a case that would make even the most seasoned investigative journalist proud. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the room as Amelia methodically packed her belongings. Her eyes flickered momentarily to the framed photograph on the wall, a group shot from Caldwell Tech's 20th anniversary celebration, where she stood proudly beside Ethan's grandfather, the company's founder. How times had changed since then, how values had shifted. But some things remained constant: the pursuit of truth, the importance of integrity, and the inevitable consequences of corruption left unchecked. I trust you'll honor our non-disclosure agreement. Ethan's voice cut through her thoughts, his tone carrying just a hint of nervousness beneath its authoritative veneer. He needn't have worried. Amelia had no intention of breaching any agreements. She had something far better planned, something that would expose the rot at the core of Caldwell Tech without violating a single legal clause. Moving with the grace of someone who had long mastered the art of maintaining dignity under pressure, Amelia secured the last file in her briefcase. Her retirement watch, a gift from the company 25 years ago, caught the light as she adjusted her cuff, a subtle reminder of the years she had devoted to building Caldwell Tech into the powerhouse it had become. Years that Ethan now sought to erase with the stroke of a pen. You'll receive your severance details by end of day, Ethan continued, his words tumbling out in an obvious attempt to fill the charged silence. And please remember that we value confidentiality regarding company matters. His emphasis on the last sentence betrayed his anxiety, though he tried to mask it with a practiced smile. Little did he know that Amelia had already taken steps to ensure that certain truths would come to light, regardless of any paperwork they might sign today. The weight of her briefcase felt reassuring in her hand as Amelia turned toward the door. Each step she took away from the conference table marked not an ending, but rather the beginning of something far greater than Ethan could possibly comprehend. 47 years in the corporate world had taught her many things, but perhaps the most valuable lesson was this: true power doesn't lie in titles or corner offices, it resides in knowledge, patience, and the courage to use both wisely. As the heavy oak door clicked shut behind her, sealing her exit from Caldwell Tech's executive suite, Amelia permitted herself a deep breath. The air seemed somehow lighter out here, away from the toxic atmosphere of that conference room. Yet she knew her work was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The evidence she had gathered wasn't meant for immediate release. Rather, it was a carefully orchestrated symphony waiting for the perfect moment to reach its crescendo. And when it did, the entire business world would sit up and take notice. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt interminable, each floor bringing her closer to freedom but also deeper into her memories. She recalled the countless hours spent mentoring young executives, including a teenage Ethan during his summer internships. Back then, he'd shown promise, a quick mind and genuine interest in technology. Somewhere along the way, that potential had twisted into something darker, consumed by greed and entitlement. It wasn't until she'd uncovered the first signs of financial irregularities 2 years ago that she truly understood how far he'd fallen. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a text from Margaret, her closest friend and former colleague. "Are you okay?" It read simply. Amelia smiled despite herself. They'd worked side by side for 30 years, sharing everything from strategic breakthroughs to personal heartaches. Margaret had warned her about challenging Ethan too openly, but Amelia had known it was necessary. Corruption thrived in silence, and she'd vowed long ago never to be complicit in its growth. Stepping out onto the bustling city street, Amelia felt the cool autumn air against her face. The familiar sights and sounds of downtown Chicago surrounded her, the honking taxis, the hurried footsteps of businesspeople, the distant wail of sirens. Yet today, everything seemed sharper, more vivid. Freedom from Caldwell Tech's golden cage brought clarity she hadn't realized she'd lost. The documents in her briefcase weren't just evidence. They were pieces of a puzzle she'd been assembling for months, each one revealing a different facet of Ethan's elaborate scheme. She made her way to the small cafe 2 blocks away, where she'd arranged to meet Dr. Chen, the forensic accountant who had helped her verify the financial discrepancies. As she waited, sipping her usual black coffee, her mind drifted back to the night she discovered the first major red flag. It had been during a routine audit of international accounts, something she'd insisted on maintaining personally despite Ethan's protests. The numbers hadn't added up, not by a long shot. What started as a minor inconsistency had unraveled into a complex web of offshore accounts, shell companies, and illegal transactions spanning multiple continents. Dr. Chan arrived precisely on time, his weathered briefcase looking almost identical to hers. They exchanged a knowing glance before settling into their usual corner booth. "I've finished analyzing the latest set of documents," he said quietly, sliding a thin folder across the table. "It's worse than we thought. The money trail leads directly to several sanctioned entities." His words hung heavy in the air between them, each syllable carrying the weight of potential scandal and criminal charges. Amelia nodded, her expression calm despite the storm brewing inside. Over the past few months, she'd learned to maintain this facade of composure, even as the magnitude of Ethan's crimes became increasingly apparent. The documentation in front of them wasn't just about embezzlement or tax evasion, it revealed a systematic exploitation of company resources to fund activities that violated international laws. The implications extended far beyond Caldwell Tech's boardroom, touching political spheres and global markets. As they reviewed the latest findings, Amelia's thoughts kept returning to the employees still trapped within Caldwell Tech's walls. Many of them had families to support, careers invested in the company's success. Exposing Ethan's crimes would undoubtedly cause chaos, potentially costing hundreds of innocent people their jobs. Yet keeping silent would mean perpetuating a system that rewarded corruption and punished integrity. The ethical dilemma weighed heavily on her conscience, but she knew which path she had to choose. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another ally, Rachel, a young journalist from the Chicago Tribune who had approached Amelia months ago with suspicions about Caldwell Tech's overseas operations. At first, Amelia had been wary of involving the press, but Rachel's determination and professional integrity had won her over. Together, they had developed a plan that would protect whistleblowers while ensuring the truth reached the public domain. "We need to move quickly," Rachel whispered, sliding a USB drive across the table. "My editor is getting antsy. We've got enough for a preliminary report, but we need more concrete evidence before we can publish anything substantial." The drive contained encrypted files detailing initial findings that could serve as a foundation for their investigation. Amelia knew that publishing too soon could jeopardize everything, yet waiting too long risked losing the momentum they'd built. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cafe as they discussed strategy. Each person brought unique expertise to the table, Dr. Chen's financial analysis, Rachel's journalistic instincts, and Amelia's intimate knowledge of Caldwell Tech's inner workings. Together, they formed a formidable team, united by a shared commitment to justice. Yet the road ahead promised to be treacherous, filled with legal challenges, media scrutiny, and potentially dangerous adversaries. As they wrapped up their meeting, Amelia couldn't help but reflect on how dramatically her life had changed in such a short time. From trusted executive to whistleblower, from mentor to investigator, Each role demanded different skills, different sacrifices. Yet through it all ran a common thread, the unwavering belief that truth mattered, that accountability was essential, and that sometimes doing the right thing required walking away from everything you'd ever known. The weeks following her termination transformed into a delicate dance of gathering evidence and building alliances. Amelia found herself working longer hours than ever before, her modest apartment becoming command central for an operation that grew more complex with each passing day. The dining table disappeared beneath stacks of documents, laptop screens, and whiteboards covered in color-coded connections between offshore accounts and shell companies. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford, but the adrenaline of discovery kept her going. Margaret proved invaluable in navigating the labyrinth of corporate politics. Through their decades-long friendship, they had developed a shorthand that now served them well in covert communications. During their weekly bridge games, which had suddenly become more frequent, they would exchange coded information about which executives showed signs of unease or which departments seemed particularly vulnerable to Ethan's influence. These seemingly innocent social gatherings provided crucial intel while maintaining plausible deniability. Dr. Chun worked tirelessly to trace the financial threads that led deeper into the web of corruption. His small accounting firm became a front for their investigations, with junior associates unknowingly contributing to their cause through legitimate audit work that occasionally intersected with their targets. The professor's mild-mannered exterior masked a fierce determination to expose the truth, and his technical expertise proved invaluable in decrypting complex financial records. Rachel, meanwhile, leveraged her position at the Tribune to gather external verification of their findings. Her network of sources in the business community began providing independent confirmation of suspicious activities linked to Coldwell Tech. The young journalist's persistence paid off when she managed to obtain internal memos from a former employee who had grown disillusioned with Ethan's leadership. These documents not only corroborated Amelia's evidence, but also hinted at connections to political figures who had benefited from Coldwell Tech's illegal operations. Yet the investigation wasn't without its close calls. One evening, as Amelia was reviewing particularly damning emails in her home office, she noticed movement outside her window. A black sedan had been parked across the street for over an hour, its engine idling. Her heart raced as she remembered similar vehicles appearing near Dr. Chen's office and Rachel's apartment complex. Someone was watching them, and they were running out of time. That night, they implemented new security protocols, including encrypted communication channels and regular changes of meeting locations. The stress began taking its toll. Amelia noticed new lines etched into her reflection, her hair showing more silver strands than she cared to admit. Yet she found strength in unexpected places: the young barista at her favorite cafe who slipped her articles about corporate corruption, the retired detective neighbor who offered advice on counter-surveillance techniques, and especially in the quiet moments when she allowed herself to imagine a world where companies operated with integrity. Their breakthrough came during what should have been a routine review of shipping manifests. Hidden among thousands of pages of logistics documentation was a pattern that made Amelia's blood run cold: shipments of components destined for countries under strict trade embargoes. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Coldwell Tech wasn't just engaging in financial crimes, they were actively contributing to global instability. This discovery changed everything, elevating their investigation from corporate malfeasance to matters of national security. With this new evidence, they had to tread even more carefully. Amelia reached out to her contacts in government oversight agencies, using back channels she'd cultivated throughout her career. These connections proved crucial in understanding the full scope of Coldwell Tech's operations and the potential ramifications of exposing them. Each conversation left her more convinced of the necessity of their mission, but also more aware of the dangers involved. The team's dynamic evolved as well. What had started as separate individuals pursuing justice gradually became a tightly knit unit bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. They celebrated small victories together, successfully obtaining a crucial document, witnessing an executive grow visibly uncomfortable during a meeting, and supported each other through setbacks. Their meetings, held in various locations from public libraries to empty church basements, became spaces of both intense focus and much-needed camaraderie. As winter approached, bringing shorter days and colder nights, their investigation gained momentum. The evidence mounted, forming an irrefutable case against Ethan and his co-conspirators. Yet with each new revelation came increased danger. Anonymous threats appeared in their email inboxes, and subtle warnings filtered through professional networks. Still they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that they were fighting for something bigger than themselves, for the principle that no one, regardless of wealth or power, should be above the law. Amelia found herself revisiting old lessons from her early days in business, the importance of timing, the power of leverage, the art of strategic positioning. These principles, once applied to corporate growth and market expansion, now guided their approach to exposing corruption. Every decision, every action, was carefully calculated to maximize impact while minimizing risk. The experience transformed her understanding of power dynamics, revealing that true strength often lay not in force but in the careful accumulation and deployment of truth. Through it all, she maintained a sense of perspective that surprised even herself. While others might have been consumed by bitterness or revenge, Amelia focused on the larger picture. This wasn't about personal vindication or settling scores, it was about creating change, about demonstrating that accountability was possible even at the highest levels of corporate power. Each challenge they faced only strengthened her resolve to see this through to its conclusion, whatever that might be. The turning point came unexpectedly during a particularly brutal Chicago snowstorm. Amelia had arranged to meet Rachel at their usual cafe, but worsening weather conditions forced them to relocate to a small diner several blocks away. As they settled into their booth, steam rising from cups of hot chocolate, Rachel slid a plain manila envelope across the table. "This arrived at the office yesterday," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's addressed to you." Inside the envelope were photographs, grainy but unmistakable images of their recent meetings, captured from various angles. Some showed Amelia entering Dr. Chen's office, others caught her exchanging documents with Margaret outside a grocery store. The most disturbing photo depicted Rachel leaving Amelia's apartment building late one evening. Attached to the photos was a single sheet of paper containing 3 words, "Cease or consequences." The threat sent a chill through Amelia that had nothing to do with the winter weather. For the first time, the reality of their situation crystallized with terrifying clarity. They weren't dealing with mere corporate espionage or competitive intelligence gathering. Someone was actively monitoring their every move, willing to escalate their tactics to prevent exposure. The photographs represented more than surveillance. They were a direct attack on their operations' foundation of secrecy and safety. Back at her apartment, Amelia spread the photos across her kitchen table, each image telling a story of compromised security. The angle of some shots suggested high-powered lenses, while others appeared to be taken from surprisingly close proximity. Whoever was behind this had resources, patience, and a disturbing level of access to their movements. Her mind raced through possible suspects, disgruntled employees, rival corporations, even elements within Coldwell Tech itself. The scope of potential enemies was vast, and the implications terrifying. Margaret arrived within the hour, her usual composure replaced by controlled panic. "We need to shut this down," she said immediately, her eyes scanning the photographs. "This isn't just about us anymore. Look at these shots of Rachel leaving your place. They're targeting everyone connected to you." Her hands trembled as she picked up one of the images, confirming what Amelia had already deduced. The surveillance extended beyond their immediate circle, putting everyone they interacted with at risk. Dr. Chen joined them via secure video call, his normally composed demeanor showing signs of strain. "I've detected unusual activity on my office servers," he reported. "Someone's been attempting to breach our firewalls. So far they haven't succeeded, but it's only a matter of time before they find a vulnerability." His words hung heavy in the air, adding technological warfare to their growing list of concerns. Rachel, speaking through a secure messaging app, confirmed that her editor had received anonymous tips questioning her journalistic integrity. "They're trying to discredit me before I can publish anything," she typed. "Classic intimidation tactic, make me look unreliable before I can break the story." The realization that their opponents were employing multi-pronged strategies to neutralize their threat demonstrated a level of sophistication that chilled them all. Yet amid the fear and tension, something remarkable happened. Rather than retreating, the team found themselves drawing closer together, their bonds strengthening in the face of danger. Margaret began implementing counter-surveillance measures, teaching them how to detect tails and recognize compromised locations. Dr. Chen accelerated his data encryption protocols, creating layers of protection around their digital evidence. Rachel worked feverishly to authenticate their findings through independent sources, ensuring that even if their primary evidence chain was compromised, alternative verification existed. Amelia found herself coordinating their responses with military precision, her decades of crisis management finally paying dividends. They established new communication protocols, rotating safe houses for meetings, and developing contingency plans for various worst-case scenarios. The threat had forced them to operate at their absolute best, transforming fear into fuel for their mission. Their next move came from an unexpected source. During a clandestine meeting in a university library's rare book section, Dr. Chun presented a breakthrough. "I've identified patterns in Caldwell Tech's charitable contributions," he explained, his eyes bright with excitement despite their circumstances. "They're funneling money through legitimate organizations to cover tracks of their illegal activities." The discovery opened new avenues of investigation while providing crucial distance from their immediate threat. By focusing on publicly available information, they could advance their case without directly confronting their watchers. The psychological toll remained significant. Sleep became elusive, every shadow suspicious, every unfamiliar face potentially hostile. Yet they developed coping mechanisms, finding strength in their shared purpose. Late-night strategy sessions morphed into impromptu therapy sessions, where they processed their fears and frustrations. Amelia found herself serving not just as leader but as counselor, drawing on her years of mentoring experience to keep the team grounded and focused. Their opponents' attempts to intimidate them inadvertently achieved the opposite effect. Each threat, each act of surveillance, only reinforced their determination to succeed. The photographs, once symbols of vulnerability, transformed into motivation. They created a wall of shame in their secure meeting space, displaying the surveillance images alongside their mounting evidence of Caldwell Tech's crimes. Each new piece of proof they uncovered became a direct response to their adversaries' attempts to silence them. As the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in white, their operation gained a new sense of urgency and purpose. The threat had forced them to evolve, to become more sophisticated in their methods while maintaining their moral compass. What had started as a straightforward investigation had transformed into a complex game of cat and mouse, with stakes higher than any of them had initially imagined. Yet through it all, their resolve remained unshaken. If anything, the danger only strengthened their commitment to seeing justice served, no matter the personal cost. The relentless pressure of their investigation began to manifest in ways neither Amelia nor her team had anticipated. During a particularly tense meeting in the basement of an abandoned bookstore, she noticed Rachel absent-mindedly rubbing her temples, dark circles evident beneath her usually vibrant eyes. Margaret had started wearing gloves indoors, her hands raw from compulsive washing, a habit she developed after discovering listening devices planted in her home office. Even Dr. Chun, typically unflappable, had begun double-checking his calculations multiple times, his confidence shaken by the constant threat of surveillance. Amelia herself found her reflection increasingly unfamiliar. The woman staring back from her bathroom mirror bore little resemblance to the confident executive who had once commanded boardrooms with ease. Her movements had become more cautious, her laughter less frequent, her sleep punctuated by nightmares of shadowy figures and incriminating documents catching fire. Yet beneath this visible strain lay a steeliness that surprised even her closest allies. Each obstacle they encountered only sharpened her focus, transforming fear into fuel for their mission. Their personal sacrifices extended beyond psychological strain. Margaret had effectively ended her dating life, canceling plans and pushing away potential suitors to avoid compromising their operation. Rachel had missed her younger sister's wedding, citing work commitments that couldn't be rescheduled, while Dr. Chun had postponed his annual fishing trip with college friends, a tradition spanning 3 decades. Amelia herself had stopped attending her weekly book club, severed ties with former colleagues, and even sold her beloved lakeside cottage to eliminate predictable patterns in her life. The emotional toll manifested in unexpected ways. During one late-night strategy session, Rachel broke down while discussing the letters threatening her journalism career. "I worked so hard to build my reputation," she sobbed, clutching a mug of tea that had gone cold hours ago. "What if they succeed? What if this ruins everything I've worked for?" Margaret held her while Amelia paced the room, struggling to find words of comfort when she herself felt equally vulnerable. Yet amidst the darkness, moments of profound connection emerged. Their shared experiences forged bonds stronger than any corporate loyalty or casual friendship. When Dr. Chen's wife fell ill, the team rallied around him, taking over his workload while he attended to family matters. Margaret's baking skills, once reserved for holiday parties, now produced stress-relieving treats that became staples of their meetings. Amelia found herself opening up about her late husband's death in ways she hadn't since his passing 5 years ago, drawing parallels between his battle with cancer and their current fight against corruption. Their relationships with the outside world underwent dramatic shifts. Neighbors who had once greeted Amelia warmly now eyed her warily, confused by her sudden withdrawal from community activities. Professional acquaintances expressed concern about her mental health, interpreting her isolation as depression rather than strategic necessity. Even simple tasks like grocery shopping became exercises in paranoia, each interaction analyzed for potential threats or surveillance opportunities. The passage of time became distorted, measured not in days or weeks but in evidence gathered and risks taken. Christmas decorations went up and came down again while they worked through holidays, their makeshift command center illuminated by strings of colored lights that seemed incongruous with their serious mission. New Year's Eve found them huddled around laptops, tracing financial transactions while fireworks exploded silently outside their windows. Despite the mounting pressure, their work ethic only intensified. Amelia discovered reserves of energy she hadn't known existed, fueled by the knowledge that each sacrifice brought them closer to their goal. The team developed rituals to maintain morale: Tuesday morning coffee runs to a specific shop where they could speak freely, Friday afternoon debriefings that doubled as therapy sessions, and Sunday evening planning sessions accompanied by takeout from their favorite Thai restaurant. Their investigation had become more than just a mission. It had evolved into a way of life that demanded everything they had to give. Each member of the team had sacrificed pieces of themselves, their privacy, their peace of mind, their sense of normalcy, yet they continued forward, driven by the conviction that their cause transcended personal cost. The photographs that had once threatened to destroy them now served as grim reminders of why they couldn't afford to stop, why every sacrifice was necessary, and why failure was no longer an option. As spring slowly began to thaw Chicago's frozen landscape, the team found themselves at a crossroads. Their evidence was comprehensive, their network of allies robust, and their resolve stronger than ever. Yet the question of timing loomed larger with each passing day. Amelia stared out her apartment window at the emerging green shoots pushing through winter's crust, contemplating the delicate balance between preparation and action. They had documented enough to bring down Caldwell Tech's corrupt empire, but the manner and moment of revelation would determine everything. The media landscape had shifted dramatically in recent months. Public appetite for corporate accountability had reached fever pitch, with several high-profile scandals making headlines and sparking widespread outrage. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags demanding transparency and justice, creating an environment ripe for their revelations. Yet this same heightened awareness made their opponents more vigilant, more desperate to maintain their grip on power. Their strategy sessions grew more intense, debates about the optimal approach often extending late into the night. Should they release their findings incrementally, building a case piece by piece to maintain public interest? Or would a single overwhelming disclosure create the necessary shockwave to force immediate action? Each option carried risks and benefits that needed careful consideration, especially given the sophisticated surveillance operation now monitoring their every move. Dr. Chun proposed a mathematical model to predict the impact of different release strategies, mapping potential outcomes against variables like media cycles and political calendars. His charts and graphs covered entire walls of their secure meeting space, each scenario more complex than the last. Meanwhile, Rachel worked her contacts in the journalism world, gauging which outlets might provide the most credible platform while offering sufficient protection against legal retaliation. The international dimension of Caldwell Tech's crimes added another layer of complexity. Evidence implicating foreign governments and multinational organizations meant they couldn't rely solely on domestic media channels. Amelia spent hours coordinating with investigative journalists abroad, carefully timing their disclosures to create a global wave of exposure that would be impossible to contain or discredit. The logistics resembled planning a military campaign more than executing a corporate takedown. Their opponents, sensing the approaching storm, began making moves of their own. Key executives started disappearing from public view, transferring assets, and restructuring holdings through increasingly convoluted networks. Legal teams launched preemptive strikes against potential whistleblowers, filing lawsuits and issuing cease and desist orders against anyone who might consider speaking out. The pressure mounted daily, forcing the team to adapt their plans with increasing frequency. Margaret's insights proved invaluable in navigating this volatile landscape. Her decades of experience in corporate politics helped them anticipate their adversaries' moves, allowing them to stay one step ahead in the chess game of public relations and legal maneuvering. She developed a matrix of potential responses to different scenarios, preparing them for every possible reaction from Caldwell Tech's defense team. Yet amidst the strategic planning, Amelia found herself reflecting on the human element of their mission. The young engineers who had trusted Caldwell Tech with their careers, the investors who had believed in the company's promise, the communities that had welcomed their factories, all would be affected by the coming revelations. This awareness tempered their approach, reminding them that their goal wasn't destruction for destruction's sake, but the establishment of a new standard for corporate responsibility. Their final preparations took on an almost ritualistic quality. Evidence was triple-checked and quadruple-backed up, distributed across secure servers in multiple jurisdictions. Statements were drafted and redrafted, each word chosen with surgical precision to convey maximum impact while maintaining legal defensibility. Contingency plans were developed for every imaginable outcome, from complete vindication to total disaster. As they fine-tuned their approach, the team found themselves oscillating between anticipation and apprehension. The weight of their accumulated evidence pressed heavily upon them, a burden of truth that demanded to be released. Yet the knowledge of what might follow, the investigations, the trials, the media frenzy, created a tension that kept them awake at night, rehearsing conversations and anticipating questions. The city outside Amelia's window transformed with spring's arrival, trees budding and streets filling with renewed energy. Yet inside their secure spaces, the atmosphere remained charged with purpose and possibility. They had reached the point where preparation met opportunity, where evidence met ethics, where individual courage intersected with collective action. The pieces were in place, the players ready, the moment approaching. All that remained was to choose when and how to pull the trigger on the most significant corporate exposé in recent memory. The morning they chose to act arrived with crystalline clarity. Amelia stood at the window of their secure command center, watching the sun rise over Chicago's skyline. The city stirred awake, unaware that its corporate landscape was about to be forever altered. Around her, the team worked with quiet efficiency, each member focused on their role in the carefully orchestrated plan. Today was the day they would unveil the truth, not with reckless abandon but with precision and purpose. Rachel had coordinated with a coalition of trusted journalists across multiple continents, ensuring simultaneous publication of their findings. At 8 a.m. local time, investigative reports began appearing in major outlets worldwide, The New York Times, The Guardian, Le Monde, and others. Each article meticulously documented Caldwell Tech's illegal activities, supported by irrefutable evidence compiled over months of painstaking work. Social media exploded almost instantly as hashtags like #ExposeCaldwell and #CorporateAccountability trended globally. By mid-morning, law enforcement agencies were mobilizing. FBI agents raided Caldwell Tech headquarters, seizing servers and documents while executives scrambled to mount a defense. Ethan Caldwell was seen being escorted from the building in handcuffs, his smug confidence replaced by wide-eyed panic. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live footage of the unfolding drama to millions of viewers. It was a scene straight out of a thriller, except this was real, and justice was finally within reach. Amelia watched it all unfold from a small cafe several blocks away, her heart pounding with a mix of triumph and relief. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, the weight of secrecy lifting from her shoulders. Margaret sat beside her, clutching her hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," Margaret whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We actually did it." As the day wore on, the scope of their impact became undeniable. Stock markets reacted swiftly, with Caldwell Tech's shares plummeting as investors fled en masse. Politicians who had once shielded the company found themselves under scrutiny, forced to distance themselves or face public backlash. International regulators launched investigations into the offshore accounts and sanctioned entities tied to Caldwell Tech's operations. The ripple effects spread far beyond one corporation, igniting conversations about corporate ethics and accountability on a global scale. That evening, the team gathered in a private room at their favorite diner, the same place where they had weathered so many tense moments together. This time, however, laughter filled the air instead of anxiety. Dr. Chun raised a toast, his glass clinking against theirs. "To truth," he said simply, his eyes shining with pride. "And to courage." Rachel pulled out her phone, showing the messages pouring in from colleagues, strangers, and even former Caldwell Tech employees thanking them for exposing the corruption. One message stood out, a young engineer named Priya, who wrote, "I always knew something wasn't right, but I didn't have the proof. You gave me my voice back." Amelia felt a lump rise in her throat as she read it aloud. Their sacrifices had mattered, not just for themselves, but for countless others who had suffered silently under Caldwell Tech's shadow. The legal battles that followed were lengthy and complex, but the tide had turned irreversibly. With mountains of evidence and widespread public support, prosecutors pursued charges against Ethan and his co-conspirators aggressively. Key figures involved in the illegal operations were arrested, assets frozen, and reforms implemented to prevent such abuses in the future. Coldwell Tech itself underwent a dramatic restructuring, emerging as a leaner, more transparent entity under new leadership committed to ethical practices. For Amelia, the aftermath brought unexpected rewards. Her story inspired a wave of whistleblower protections, leading to legislation that made it safer for individuals to come forward without fear of retaliation. She became an advocate for corporate reform, speaking at conferences and mentoring young professionals determined to create change from within their industries. Though she no longer held a corner office, her influence grew exponentially, touching lives across generations. Margaret returned to her social life, reconnecting with friends and family while continuing to serve as Amelia's closest confidant. Rachel earned accolades for her reporting, including prestigious awards that solidified her reputation as a fearless journalist. Dr. Chun published a book detailing the forensic methods used in their investigation, becoming a sought-after expert in financial crime detection. Together, they remained bound by their shared experience, meeting regularly to celebrate milestones and reflect on how far they'd come. 1 year later, on the anniversary of their victory, Amelia stood on a stage addressing a packed auditorium. Behind her, a slideshow displayed images of the team's journey, from clandestine meetings in dimly lit rooms to triumphant headlines dominating front pages. As she spoke, her voice steady and resolute, she looked out at the sea of faces before her. Many were young professionals, eager to learn how to navigate the often murky waters of corporate responsibility. When I started this fight, Amelia began, pausing to let her words settle, I never imagined it would take me here. But what I learned along the way is that integrity isn't just a value, it's a choice. A choice we make every single day, even when it's hard, even when it costs us everything. Applause erupted as she concluded, echoing through the hall like a promise fulfilled. Outside, the city sparkled under a clear night sky, its lights reflecting off the river below. Somewhere in the distance, a clock tower chimed midnight, marking the end of another chapter, but also the beginning of something new. Amelia stepped off the stage to join her friends, who greeted her with warm hugs and proud smiles. They walked together into the cool spring air, their steps lighter than they'd been in years. The road ahead would still hold challenges, but for now, they allowed themselves to savor the sweetness of victory, a reminder that courage, persistence, and unity could overcome even the most entrenched systems of power. And as they disappeared into the bustling streets of Chicago, their laughter carried on the breeze, a testament to the enduring power of truth and the unbreakable bonds forged in its pursuit.